leave it where it's at, and then we can work it up louder or quieter for me. Yes. Okay, I'll bring it down a little bit. Okay. Okay. So just to double check, you've got all the slides you need and the video? Okay. Oh, you don't have a perfect view over there. Here's that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The conference is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please welcome to the stage Blair Osler.
Special delivery.
I know. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm so glad to see so many of you here after last night. I bolted because I am one of the more quiet gays when it comes to evening hours. I like to have a nice cup of tea, and I'm in bed, lights out by 10. So it's really good to see a lot of you here this morning. We're going to start off the morning we're going to sing Happy Birthday to Miss Lori Lee Hall. Come on up here, Lori. Come on up here. I love it. I love it. Come on up here. Come on up here.
This feels like primary.
I know. It's like primary. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lori. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start off with, we're going to have an opening song, Near, Oh My God, to Thee, and then afterwards we're going to have an invocation by Devin Ogden, and then we're going to hear a few remarks from Willie Marshall.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful to have this organization, this community to bless us in our lives of affirmation. And grateful that we can be here and participate in this conference, and grateful that thou hast made it possible that each of us that are here today are able to participate. So grateful for all those who are the leaders of this organization, that they've been able to put this together, and pray that thou will continue to bless them and strengthen them in their responsibilities and the wonderful volunteer efforts that they're making. Father, we pray for each one of us that are here today. We pray that our hearts will be strengthened, and the love that we feel for each other will be strengthened, and we'll feel that love, and especially that we'll feel of thy love and know of thy that all that thou hast done for us and will continue to do for each of us. We pray that we'll find healing, and that thou wilt lead us onto the path that will bring us the greatest happiness for each of us. We ask you to bless the leaders of the church. Help them to understand their roles as witnesses of Jesus Christ, and especially of the love of Jesus Christ. Help them to lead the church in overcoming bigotry and intolerance, and replace it with love, with Christ-like love. And Father, we pray for thy Spirit to be here with us. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Our dear James Kent was unable to come this year to affirmation, but I had a long talk with him last night. I remember D.J. Thompson. Any more? And once again, John Lennon, though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them in my life. I'll love you more. Thank you.
I didn't want to be up on the stage for this because it's very vulnerable to be up there. Before we move on to our next musical number, I feel impressed to share some thoughts with you. As some of you know, I'm writing a book, Queer Mormon Theology, which is actually finished. It's in the process of publication, which is taking way longer than I want it to. But in this book, I've poured my queerness into it and my Mormonness into it. And that can be really difficult sometimes to be able to hold space for both those identities, which are just as much a part of me. I can't let go of one and not the other. And I wanted to share with you a tiny excerpt from my book because I'm feeling it right here, right now. Since the origins of Mormonism, early pioneers used symbols to bind their communities together. One of the most iconic symbols which has persisted in Mormon culture is the beehive. The beehive was described in Deseret News as such. The hive and honeybees form a communal coat of arms. It is a significant representation of industry, harmony, order, and frugality of the people, and of the sweet results of their toil, the union, and their intelligent cooperation. It was through working together in a system of cooperation that the early pioneers created communities in a hostile environment. The beehive represented a community which persevered to keep Mormonism alive. I see this passion and spirit in early Mormon pioneers, but I see them shining in my fellow queers. I have participated in many queer Mormon groups, and I can tell you we live and breathe the values of queer Mormon pioneers, even if you don't identify as Mormon. We are the pioneers of today, building a community with perseverance and industry in a sometimes hostile environment. Even when we are asked to leave churches and temples, we press forward. We could pick up the pieces of shattered hopes of celestial eternities, and we got to work. We did so frugally. We did so on limited means. We buried our friends along the way, just like the pioneers. We've lost so far too many, but we carry on. We carry on. We will march in streets and sing in pews. We will preach it from pulpits with tears streaming down our cheeks. We have built a community worthy of a coat of arms. Thank you, my queer peers. Thank you. Oh. Okay, next we're going to hear a love choir for the beauty of the earth.
In the middle of this piece, we invite the congregation to join with us in the most important verse of this song.
right, next up, I'm really excited for our keynote speaker this morning, Stacey Harkey. Stacey was born and raised in the bold country of Texas. After mastering the English language, he immigrated to Utah and attended Brigham Young University, earned a bachelor's degree in public relations, and started working as an actor-writer for a comedy sketch show called Studio C. He recently left Studio C and started a family-friendly media network with his best friends. Oh, and by the way, he just announced to the world in December 2018 that he was gay and he won't stop talking about it. Everyone, welcome Stacey.
Oh, wow. I'm so bad at those bios. I'm like, I'm just going to have a great day and see if they read it. I don't know. I feel very humbled to be here right now. Like, I barely just came out. It's been like a couple months, like 6, I don't know. I'm not counting. Who's doing the math? But I feel very inadequate to be before you. I feel like I should be learning from you all that paved the way for me, or that are planning on paving the way for me. So I feel like as I stand before you, I can't share some insightful knowledge, or I can't give you some like nugget of wisdom. I can only share my story in hopes that there's something there that can be helpful in some sense. So you're going to hear a lot about me today. I kind of just want to tell you my story and kind of what I've learned in that process. Also, another embarrassing fact. These are my notes. I was going to have them on cute little note cards, and then I was like, I have too much to talk about. And so I wrote like 8 pages worth, so sit tight. But I want to start off with an embarrassing story. I feel like this is a good way. I want to lead with vulnerability. And there's no better way to be vulnerable and create a safe place than making me look like the dumbest person here. So let me tell you a little embarrassing story that's a little insightful of me as a human. So I grew up I'm just a very curious person. I'm always, and not just curious, like I wonder if, like I would like test things out as a child. And it was very, very annoying for my parents. And so I remember being maybe in like middle school, and I found weed killer in the garage. And I was like, but like, does it really work? Like, come on now, like, does it really work? What is this magic? You just pour it on grass and it died. Okay, whatever. So I went out and I tested it, right? I tested it on the front lawn, and I was like, you know, you have to, like a good test is very like clear, so I tried a lot of it. And a couple weeks later, my dad comes in the house and he's like, boy, what is wrong with you? And I was like, what are you talking about, Dad? He's like, did you put weed killer on the lawn? And I was like, how did you know it was me? Well, I forgot because of my great test, I had to use a very specific pattern, so I spelled my initials in the front lawn in weed killer. Giant initials spread out. And so for the longest time, you could drive by our like humble home and see SJH in the front. And my dad often was so upset, but like so amused that he could never really he couldn't punish me. He'd be laughing too much or something. So that's kind of an insight. I grew up a very curious child. I love animals. I love learning, that kind of thing. I watch a lot of Netflix documentaries. Like, you want to test me. Like, I watch them all. And I think this is something that you're going to hear a lot of this. You're going to hear a lot of stories about me, and you're going to hear a lot of animal stories today. So, buckle up. At a young age, and like most of us, I got the feedback that being a certain way was wrong, and being a certain way was right. And that terrified me as a kid. I'm an extrovert. I'm pretty loud. I'm in your face. But as a child, I was super, super shy. I was terrified of letting people see who I was, of revealing this aspect of myself to the world, because I got pretty quick feet. I remember being pretty young, and I remember my cousins making fun of me, calling me a Philly boy. They're like, oh, you're so fruity, Philly boy. And it was like horrible. And I was like, there are just stories I have of moments where it's like being who you are is wrong, so you must fight that. And so I was like, okay, I hid who I was from the world. I grew up incredibly shy. And the idea of letting the world see who I was like absolutely terrifying. This reminds me of an animal story. So there is a duck. I saw this documentary, right, on Netflix. And there's this type of duck. It's like, I think it's called a wood duck. And they make their nest in trees. Cool. That's like really nice, you know, away from predators, safe place. Ducks live in water. Trees are a safe place, you know, away from water predators. So this mother duck makes its nest nice and comfy in the tree, in this hole in the tree. lays eggs, and you're like, it's a beautiful process. The babies are born. It's great. Ducks need water, though. They don't live in trees. And so it's not long after the mother duck flies out of the hole and starts calling to her baby. She's like, let's go. We need to find the pond. She sits there and calls, and you see these little babies. They're just kind of gangly and uncoordinated. They like claw their way up to this hole, and then they look out. And this is when you realize these babies are 40 feet up in the air. They're in a very, I don't know whose mom's idea that was, but they're in a very tall tree. And you realize these are helpless baby ducklings. They can't do much besides walk and maybe swim. They can definitely swim, they're ducks. But they're looking out at this hole, and it is massive. It is 40 feet down. Mom duck can fly. Babies can't fly. And that's kind of how I felt at this point. I'm at this aspect of coming out and letting the world see who I was like standing at this 40-foot ledge and being like, I can either stay here in this hole or I can jump, and that's not happening. All right, so I grew up shy. I grew up reserved, and I hated it. It was hard. It hurt. The pain from not being able to be authentic was very stifling, and it was suffocating. I found myself in a really interesting position where I was caring too much about what people thought. I would stand in my closet for not in the closet, but I would stand in front of the closet for hours. Well, in the closet too, I guess. So I was stand in front of the closet for hours just trying to figure out what I could wear that wouldn't make people, that would make people like me. I remember talking to someone, and I was so overcome with the stress of being what do they think of me? That instantly I'm sweating, and there were issues there with that. It was very hard for me. But I found myself feeling incredibly stifled and feeling incredibly frustrated like this. Us human beings, we are meant to do way more than to be stifled. We are meant to create, we are meant to live, we are meant to spread our wings. And I found myself in a situation where I was feeling very, very suffocated. And so, to make a long story short, I changed school senior year of high school, and I was like, this is my chance. I'm done. I'm done caring what people think, okay? And so I made a goal. I was like, I am going to embrace myself, no matter how hard it is, and I'm going to jump. So I start, it starts basically like this, where that's number one. My goal was to embrace myself. And so I start dressing how I want to dress. I was like, forget what people think. I'm going to do my own weird style. And I'm going to go to school like that, and it's going to be who I am. I'm going to speak my mind. And it was hard. It wasn't easy. So come back to these baby ducklings, right? These baby ducklings up in this 40-foot tree. They're looking out of this hole, and they're terrified, right? But they really don't have a choice. They could either stay in that hole and not have water that they need to live, or they can jump. So these baby ducks jump. The first one leaps, and it is just as awkward as day. Little nubs flapping, not doing anything, webbed feet in the air, And these baby ducks fall 40 feet. They hit branches, they hit limbs, they hit leaves, and they're being jostled and turned. They hit the ground so hard that it bounces another several feet in the air. It's bad. And I'm like, okay, we'll see if this duck can walk. That baby duck shakes it off, finds mom, and is ready to go. It is unfazed. And that's what I found that after I leapt, after I embraced who I was and leapt, that the scariest thing about it was the suspense. The fall wasn't that bad. That sounds horrible, but essentially the concept is that I found that as I started embracing who I was, I started connecting with people more, and people started appreciating me for who I was. And the people who weren't jiving with that, they went other ways, and that was great. I started finding myself connecting in a way that I never had, and I started making friends. I started finding myself climbing out of the shell, and it was liberating. Okay, so that's my youth, my first aspect. Being a youth, embracing myself. It was beautiful, taught me a great lesson. Okay, I continue on this journey of just embracing who I am. I'm opening up more, I'm connecting, I do a year of college at BYU. I just came out of my shell more. People loved me. It was great. I was like, this is awesome. And I've never had that before. I go on an LDS mission. I serve a mission in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. My Portuguese speakers in the back. Had some interesting experiences. There was one time on the mission. So I don't know how many of you guys know this, but when you go to catch a bus in Rio, in Brazil, you don't just wait at the stop and you're like, thank you for stopping for me. You have to flag the driver down. You're like, hey. So that's a new thing for Americans. Like, we don't do that. And so I was really excited to taste that aspect of the culture, and finally my companion was like, you can flag the bus. And I was like, yes! And so the bus is coming. I was like ready. I like see that bus from like super far away, and I'm like, all I had to do was stick out my hand. It wasn't that hard, but I was so excited. And so the bus is like packed full of people, and I see the bus driver, and I'm like, and like I'm super confident, and I step off the curb, and I just feel the world rush past me. And I was like, I tell you, I didn't fall to the ground. I fell in the ground. Like, turns out there was an open manhole, and your boy found it. I just remember the world rushing past. I had a leg. This leg was up here. Luckily, my backpack, like, cushioned my ribs hitting the, like, side of the metal manhole. And I was just so confused, but I had caught the bus and we had to hop on soon. I ain't gonna wait for nobody in a manhole. Yeah, get on the bus. So I like scramble out of the manhole, and to my horror, I look up, and everyone and their mom on the bus was watching me, laughing. And I was like, stupid mission. Anyways, many more embarrassing stories on my mission, or whatever, all that good stuff. Anyway, so the moments like that were actually very helpful too, and helping me like embrace myself. Because, at the end of the day, they laughed at me, and that was the worst thing that happened. They didn't hurt me. I just kept going, right? Became bolder and bolder, unfortunately. But anyways, I serve a mission. I come home. I get back to school. I'm an RA, a resident advisor, assistant. I forget what it stands for. But anyways, I mentored like a group of like 60 freshmen. It was so fun. I'm like a counselor. I'm just coming more and more out of my shell. And eventually, I auditioned, one of my boys, when I was an RA, one of the freshmen was like, hey, I want to audition for the sketch comedy group. Will you do it with me? And I was like, no. And he was like, please, I really want to do it, and I feel like you'll give me the motivation. And I was like, I got you. So I auditioned with him. I got in. He didn't, unfortunately. I know, it's so sad. Survival of the fittest, though. What can you say? I'm just kidding. So I get into the sketch comedy group, and I'm just constantly being pushed out of my comfort zone. Soon after the sketch comedy group BYU TV picks it up, and it becomes a TV show. Like, what? Like, I wanted to be a lawyer. Like, this is so out of my comfort zone. But it's exploding, and things are, like, life is good. I'm, like, excited. Life is thriving. I'm feeling amazing. But I'm not. Life isn't good. Up to this moment, I'd come home from my mission, and I was like, all right, now I'm going to get serious about women. Now I'm going to date women, and I'm going to find that eternal companion, and we're going to make tons of babies. We're going to multiply and replenish. And I have this I'm like, as much as I'm talking about authenticity, and as much as I'm talking about embracing myself, there's this aspect of who I am that is so far locked away. I couldn't. But like embracing who I was like a big aspect, a big mantra for my life. But this, if you're a murderer, you don't embrace that. You know what I mean? That was my mentality. It was like, you don't embrace this. You just lock it away. And the effects, I was feeling the effects. Reminds me of another documentary. This is another one about birds, actually. I didn't think if they were all about birds. I was like, hold on. So in certain areas, there are eagles that fish. And eagles are giant, majestic birds, powerful animals, birds of prey, right? And they survive off of these. They live around lakes and ponds or whatever, and they survive off of fish. And so I'm watching this documentary of this eagle, and it is just like, it's soaring, and this is a big bird, and it sees something in the water, and it just goes down, and it just grabs onto something, and it starts to lift, and you see that this big bird grabbed an equally big fish. I was like, homie, you should have grabbed a minnow. That's too much for you. It's like, and what you also realize in this moment is birds have hollow bones, no matter how big they are. They're light animals. They're not heavy animals so they can fly. This fish does not have hollow bones. As the bird pulls this fish out of the water by its talons like this bad boy is massive, and you can tell the bird is instantly like, oh crap. It starts pounding its wings. The fish ain't coming out of the water. Fish comes out a smidge. You can look at this bird carrying this fish, and you're like, if you don't drop that fish, you're going to both drown. One of you is going to drown. I had to think about that for a second. I swear, I do know a lot about animals. So you look at this and you're like, if you don't drop that fish, you're going to drown. Like, you're going to be in the water. And the bird is pounding its wings. It's beating its wings, fish is not moving. It's too much drag. It's too heavy. It's not working out. And this is kind of how I felt at this point, was I felt like this awesome, like I'm coming out of my shell, I'm spreading my wings, and yet I have this heavy burden that is taking its toll on me. Like legitimately, like my close friends, they were like, and I started getting a lot of feedback from people, and they were like, I'm not, it just feels like our friendship's kind of shallow, like I feel like you're like hiding stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, like people can see through me. It was like terrifying. This platform, I was feeling this like incongruent vibe, being that my platform's authenticity and like embracing who I am, but yet I'm hiding so much. And then on top of that, Studio C, the sketch comedy show, is like growing on BYU TV, and increasing is this pressure, this mantle of you're the good old Mormon boy, you represent BYU TV, you represent the church. The apostles love this show. And I'm like, oh crap. So I'm finding myself in a situation where I'm very torn. And I realize at a certain point that something has to change. Like, I can't keep going on like this. Something has to change. So I finally admitted to myself. I remember looking myself in the mirror, and I was like, has anyone here seen Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey? Where he's like, because of his son's birthday wish, he can't lie anymore. He's like a lawyer, fitting. And he's trying to break it, so he's trying to say that a red pin or a blue pin is red, but he just can't vocalize it. That's how I was in the mirror. I was like, I'm good. Like, I just couldn't say it. It was so hard. And eventually, I think I whispered it in Portuguese. I was like, that made me feel better. I was like, so gay. But it was this process of me admitting to myself that I was gay, right? I'm gay, okay? I stopped dating women. I was like, this is not going to work out. The last thing I want to do is like experiment with some woman's life and end up breaking. I was just like, I couldn't do it. Like, I can't do it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, it was scary. So, but I also knew that I was going into a really interesting category of really old single Mormon people. Nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of stigmas out there. Fighting them one by one. So at this point, I make some changes, and I'm like, okay, and I commit to a life of loneliness. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do this right. This is how it's going to be. And I didn't tell anyone. I kept this very internal. It was between me and God. It was with me the whole time. So a couple years later, cut to me, I am in turmoil. I am so sad and so torn up. And no one could tell. No one could tell at all. Like, I was happy and I was enjoying life, but I was also like in complete turmoil. There was one time at church that I remember, to break this sad story, my eye itched. I was like, great. I was like saying hi to people, whatever, sit down, my eye itches. I go to scratch it, and I don't know why I misjudged the distance or whatever, but I jabbed myself in the eye. I was like, I'm an adult man. I'm not going through growth spurts. Like, what's happening? I jabbed myself in the eye, and instantly I'm like, ah. And I put my head down, and I'm like thinking about how I just jabbed myself in the eye, and so I start chuckling. And I just feel a hand on my back, like, it's okay. And I was like, oh no, they think I'm crying. So instead of embarrassing them, I just like committed, and I was like, oh my goodness, thank you. But it kind of reminds me, that's kind of the facade I felt like I was living, where I was like on the outside very happy, and that hand was actually very comforting, but they didn't know that. Maybe they thought that, so that's great. But I'm in this state of turmoil, and I'm feeling so alone, and I'm so sad to the point where it physically hurts. I'd never experienced that before. And I was like, I literally was like, I cannot live like this. I was talking to a good friend of mine later, my best friend. He's great. He's like the most macho human you will ever meet in your life. He's just like, people see him and they're automatically like chauvinist. Like, he's just like a huge man. Like, he's just looks like a trucker or something. And we were chatting, and he was like, hey, would you ever tell me if you were gay? And I was like, yeah, man, wait. I realized, I was like, oh my gosh. And so I needed this. And so later I texted him, and I was like, hey, meet me here, let's chat. And I came out to him. Once again, the first person I came out to, very hard to say. But I just threw it out there. I just came out to him, and he was so great. He was like, dude, this is awesome. He was so celebratory with me. And I don't know what happened, but it felt like I leveled up. You know, it's one of those moments of by their fruits you shall know them. Like, I came out to my friend, and the moment was so empowering, and I felt so good that I was like, this is good fruit, and I want more. And I was like, this is good. It was a confirmation that what I was doing was right. And so I was like, okay, I know what I need to do. And so I instantly take it to the Lord. I was like, listen, God, we've been in this from the get-go. I need your help. What do I need to do? I've never asked this question. I've always just assumed that I knew what God wanted me to do. And I was like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? I need you to give me some direction. I'm doing my best, staying as close as I can to you, and I think this is what the scriptures demand, you know? Asking you shall receive, knocking it shall be opened unto you. I was like, should I leave this religion that I love and that I just feel so strongly about? Should I leave this religion that I love and find happiness in companionship? Or should I stay and be lonely? And I was like, I will do it. You just have to let me know what you want. And it was the sweetest experience, the most overpowering feeling of peace and contentment just washed over me. It was a feeling that brought with it information. It was a feeling that said, I know what you're going through and I love you. Who you are is not a problem. And I was like, oh gosh, thank you. That was so sweet. And then the second thing that I realized in that moment is that this dilemma of should I stay or should I go was a dilemma I gave myself. No one told me that. God never said to me. And I also want to clarify in this moment that, like, my story is my story. It's not everyone's. And I don't expect you to do anything but what you feel is right, honoring what you feel is right by you. But I felt that dilemma, that, like, choice that I'd given myself was a choice that I had given myself. God didn't give it to me. And I felt in that moment that I could still stay close to him and live my religion, and I can also honor who I was. And I felt like Thanos getting that Infinity Stone. I was like powered up. I was like ready to like kick down the door at church and be like, listen. I'm just kidding. But it was so empowering in a way that I wasn't used to. And I realized this burden that I had was not a burden at all, but was a very large part of who I was. And by locking it away, made it heavy, made it feel like a burden. Cut back to this bird that's fishing, right? Has this big fish in its talons. This fish is weighing it down. One cool thing that you see later in this video is that the bird knows what it's doing. It's not its first rodeo fishing. It takes this big fish that's dragging it down, and it just rearranges its talons so the fish is aerodynamic with the bird. And what you see is instantly when the drag stops, all of a sudden the bird gets lift. And this fish just creates an aerodynamic weight that helps that bird. It has to work hard still, but it helps that bird get lift. And what I realized with my story, this burden that I was carrying, I didn't need to change it. I didn't need to fix it. I just needed to shift my perspective. I needed to shift how I was thinking about it. And it made a world of a difference. This burden stopped being a burden and started being this delicious fish that was going to nourish me. That's a weird analogy, but you get what I'm saying, right? It was a very important moment for me, but also it opened up a door of, well, how do I do that? So for the next 6 months, I receded into this cocoon of like, okay, how do I live authentically? How do I not only embrace myself, but also live authentically with who I am? Okay, and that became the journey. I was in this cocoon. I was figuring it out. Along these lines, we were kind of getting, I wouldn't say bored, but with Studio C, we were a little bit along the lines of we needed a challenge. We needed something more. And so we left together, and we started a company called JK Studios. Woo, solved one problem, so I don't work for BYT anymore. And it's really scary, but once again, shift in perspective, and it's awesome. Good things are happening. And on top of that, I start coming out to family and friends. In like a couple weeks, I was like calling people up, and I was like, yo, your boy's gay, bye. Hey, mom, I'm gay, ciao. Like, I was like calling people up. It happened in droves, man. It was happening, and every single time it felt so good. Like, it felt amazing. And it made me, I got more comfortable doing it. I got more encouraged doing it. I just felt so good. My family was pretty supportive. There were some bumps in there, but we're all on the same page now. My mom, I'll just be honest, she actually, the Lord prepared her. I called her up, and she was like, I had an impression the other day that you were good. So I feel good about that. And I was like, thank you, God, because I was worried about her. A strong Southern Baptist-rooted black woman, she is not here to play. But at one point she was like, and this is not what everyone should do. This is me being a 30-year-old man who's just like over hiding. She was like, listen, I love you for who you are. Just don't bring any of that stuff to my house. And I was like, that's fine. I won't go to your house. And she was like, what? And I was like, you can't accept 75% of me and not 25%. You can't expect me to leave my arm at the door. I'll see you when you're ready for me. And then she called me back and was like, that was hasty. Come as you are. And I was like, shout out to Mom. She straight up that credit to her, she left and prayed about it and was like, I was wrong. The Lord corrected me. But it became this beautiful journey where I was able to come out eventually to the public and attempts to really try to be authentic with myself and embrace that. And it has been so beautiful. I'm dating this amazing man who supports me in my journey. He's great. Respects me for who I am. Respects me. I appreciate it. And I'm out of time, so I just want to still share one more story. I didn't look at this paper that much. So, one more animal story. There's an elephant safari park in Bali, India, and they're trying to increase the elephant population, especially among Indian elephants. Well, one Indian elephant is pregnant. And elephant pregnancies are no joke. Those things last 18 months, y'all. Like, no joke. Carrying a child for 18 months. So this is a big deal. They want everything to go well. The mother's going into labor. They're stoked. Indian elephants are also massive creatures. Elephants. So they're observing. I'm not going to try to be too graphic. You can look this video up, by the way. It's crazy. The mother starts giving birth to the baby, and you're like, this is beautiful. Nature's doing its thing. Oh, my gosh. Baby comes out, instantly drops like 7 feet to the ground. And you're like, oh, okay. Nature. All right, great. It's, in the jungle, it's not concrete, though. Anyways, so baby drops, and you're like, oh, all right. And then the mother turns around, and, she tenderly puts her trunk around the baby. It is so sweet. She tightens her trunk, and she lifts it up, and then slams the baby's head into the ground. I was like, this didn't happen on Dumbo. What's happening here? She grabs, and you're like, what? She grabs the baby, and slams it against the ground. You're like, stop. The elephant keeps doing it, just slamming the baby into the ground. And I'm having a moment, because I'm like, someone should stop the elephant, but how do you stop an elephant? So anyways, the elephant finally stops and puts the baby down, and you're like, whatever weird ritual that was, it's over. The elephant turns around from the baby and then kicks it. And you're like, this elephant is thousands and thousands of pounds, and this baby is lying on the ground, not moving. Elephant kicks it again. All of a sudden, the baby gasps. And you realize in this moment, the baby elephant wasn't breathing. And what the mother was doing was trying to save the baby's life. And so, and sad as it was, it's more important that this baby live. So this mother was essentially shaking and trying to get the baby's heart to work and get it to breathe, and it breathes, and then it's all sweet and tender as the baby tries to stand up and stuff. And it reminds me so much of my experience, where growing up as a youth, being in this show was like being slammed against the ground. Life had slammed me down, thrown me around, kicked me with thousands and thousands of pounds, and it hurt so much. But I look back and realize how important that was for me to live, and how important that was for me to learn how to embrace myself, how to be authentic, and how to now be boldly and proud of my story. And it means so much to me. I think of Ether 12:27. The Lord takes weak things and makes them strong. I went from a shy, introverted, scared kid to an extroverted comedic performer. Like, what? And the whole time learning how to take this power of being gay and making it a strength. And I'm so thankful for it. And so I just want to leave you all with just the memo. Just please, just be authentic. Embrace yourself for who you are. And be authentic. And it'll be all right. Thank you.
give up. It's just the weight of the world. When your heart's heavy, I will lift it for you. Don't give up, because you want to be heard. If silence keeps you, I will break it for you. Everybody wants to be understood. Well, I can hear you. Everybody wants to be loved. Don't give up, because you are loved. Don't give up. It's just the hurt that you hide.